And I went into the staff room and a wonderful, wonderful, inspirational German teacher just turned to me and said, Rachel, you have a gift. You have a gift. You have to teach. I was in China before I came here. Well, that's a story of how life is about, isn't it?
Hello everybody and welcome to Charlie and Sotogrande podcast, the place where I explore the place, the people and the passions that drive this wonderful community. Today my guest is very special. It is Rachel Dent, who is the CEO, the head of the Sotogrande International School, the cornerstone of our community. Rachel, you're so welcome.
Thank you very much.
I'll start with the first question I always ask everybody is, how would you introduce yourself to someone who has never met you?
I think I'd always have to start off by saying I'm a head of an international school in Sotogrande, that I've been in education for over 35 years, that I am also a wife and a mum and a huge dog lover.
Oh, wow. Okay. And when you say your mum, how old are your kids now?
I have one daughter who is 24 and she is in her final year studying dentistry.
Lovely, lovely.
Eventually.
It's a long career, isn't it?
Yeah, 5 years at university.
Really? Why is that? I mean, it just can't be that complicated. It's only 5 years.
Well, you've got to learn all of the anatomy and specialisation from the neck up.
Of course.
I don't want to get in trouble off any dentists.
We've had a dentist on here.
Yes.
Anders back there. He was here, so he was very good actually. Loved him. Tell us a little bit about your personal journey. How did you get to become head teacher, but maybe before that you weren't. You started as a teacher, presumably.
Well, I guess my journey starts really at school. I went to, unusually, a convent school, an all-girls school. It was a very strict school. So I got both a fantastic education, but also a very strict education. And I think I was probably a little bit of a rule breaker. One of the things at the convent that was really, really important was to remain completely silent between lessons, which I found impossible.
Right.
So I have the record, I think, for having 93 detentions in 1 year. But on one particular afternoon, I was sat in the Mother Superior's office, and she said to me, Rachel, I really hope you can find a job where you can talk from the beginning of the day to the end.
Okay.
And here I am.
And there you are.
So I think my journey started there, seriously, because I did get a good education. I then studied university. I studied English.
Yeah. It's funny because I was in Trinidad and Tobago. My father was an expat banker. And when I was at the age of learning my times table, and I learned times table with my fingers sticking out there, and someone with a ruler say 2 times 2, 4, 2 times 3, whack. And literally, I hope the last of that sort of generation of kids that really learned by that. And when I went to live in Santiago in Chile, I was put a year ahead because the headmaster, it came in a funny time of the year, wasn't a sort of an intake, sent me to the room, says, right, do this maths question and write me a little sentence on something. And I came out 4 minutes afterwards and he said, what's the problem? He says, I finished. He says, no, you haven't. Yes, I finished. But that was learning by the ruler. And obviously the worst sort of education, I think, because, once the sticker's gone, life is free.
Well, I think it stayed with me in that regard because I'm the archetypal opposite of that type of teacher. And so I actually sort of fell into education because when I was at university, I was thinking of becoming a journalist, and actually I got a scholarship when I finished at university with Time Out magazine in London. But on my third day, having worked incredibly hard to get where I thought I wanted to go, I just didn't feel it was for me.
Right.
And I got on the train back to my parents, and I remember sitting with my dad, and I said, Dad, I don't think I've found what I want to do. And he said, you get one life, Rachel. Go and find what you do want to do. Yeah. Which led me on a journey to Egypt, where my now husband, not husband then, was studying a master's in Middle Eastern politics and Arabic. And I went out there originally to write articles and to talk about Alexandria, which was a bit of an unknown in the early 90s. But that didn't pay any salary. So I rather cheekily took my CV along to 4 schools, and the first school I went into hadn't got a teacher for GCSE. And so I just completely blustered it and went, oh yes, I can teach GCSE, no problem.
What subject?
It was English,
okay.
and it was Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice, which to an international group of kids was a pretty challenging novel to have been chosen. Anyway, 3 or 4 days in, I started to notice that the students were turning up earlier and earlier for the lessons.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to leave. And I went into the staff room, and a wonderful, wonderful, inspirational German teacher just turned to me and said, Rachel, you have a gift. Mm-hmm. You have a gift. You have to teach. And it really snowballed from there. I came back to the UK, and I got the first job I went for at a grammar school. And after that, I have taught for over 35 years. I've been in state schools, grammar schools, co-ed schools, single-sex schools, and international schools.
Right. What made you go abroad? Because I think you've been in China, I think? No, not China. But
I was in China before I came here. Well, that's a story of how life is about, isn't it? So pre-pandemic, I turned 50. I'd been a head for 7 years, and I'd been in that school for 14 years because I was a deputy head and director of sixth form and IB coordinator before that. And my husband and I were just sitting having a glass of wine, which is always a deadly thing to do, talking about life. And he said, isn't it time, because Jess had gone off to uni, we think about a new adventure. And I had been approached about a position with Harrow School in Beijing, and that was all fantastic, and still is as a memory, but of course it was during the pandemic, and was to become probably one of the bravest things I think I've ever done. In simple terms, I ended up going to China on my own because all the visas were cancelled, and the school needed me. And I ended up on a COVID ward for 2 weeks in China, and then 4 weeks in quarantine, and then finally got to my school, where I led that school single-handed for 3 years, whilst we got through the pandemic.
Wow.
So it was quite a time.
Quite a challenge.
Lots of adventures along the way, and actually quite a lot of laughter as well. Yeah. I have a big sense of humour, and that gets you through a lot of things in life. I think you must
have to, otherwise you don't get on.
So that's how I got there.
Yeah. It's funny, we have friends here, the Cardells, you may not know them, they're German, they're retired, and they were school teachers as well, and they've been in Brazil and Mexico for many years, but they were in Mongolia. And they're saying that going to places like that and traveling to exotic places, maybe I don't know if that's the right word, but places that you wouldn't normally think of going to have a German school. It's such an education, such a richness of everything, the experiences you can have. I've lived in 14 different countries for more than a year, which means that I have traveled a lot, but it's the people you get to know and the culture, the way things are. It's so dramatic,
That's right. And also, I was on the board of the British International Schools of Southeast Asia. While I was out there, I was on the British Chamber of Commerce for China, because we were working to get visas to get our teachers in. And I was also on the board of ACAMIS, which is the Chinese and Mongolia schools. Wow. And we all came together as a massive community, working to try and support each other through this really challenging time. But you're absolutely right. People who go out and see the world have an outward look, and I worked with people and still work with people who have an outward look and are prepared for some adventure, see life in a more philosophical way, and so I think the world is an amazing place, and we must never forget that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've done
lots.
How did you get to Sotogrande from China, and why? Because COVID is over. Is that because there's a place in the sun and you wanted somewhere a little bit more cool?
No, absolutely not at all.
Did they go and headhunt you out?
Yes, it was a little bit of that. What happened was I came back from China with the idea that I'd take a couple of terms off, 6 months off. Yeah. Traveling was actually the last thing I was thinking about doing. However, I took a call and a friend, it's a small world, international heads particularly, that they knew I was back in the UK and they knew that I'd obviously had to leave Harrow because I needed to get back to my family. And I got this call basically saying, have you heard of Sotogrande? And I must confess, I had not. I'm now told that I should never tell anybody where it is because it's so magnificent, which is absolutely true. Quite comically, I said to Inspired, who were wonderful actually, I said, look, you're going to find this an odd request, but I can't fly again for a few weeks and months. I really need to recover because it was quite a challenge for me. And they said, that's fine. We'll do all the interviews on Teams. You've been doing it for years. You'll be a natural. I went, yeah, of course. So I went on to Teams. So I was a bit of a surprise when I turned up here because obviously everything had happened online, but for reasons to support me and just give me some time to recover. And once I got here, I had the school described to me as this just extraordinary school. And I could see just in everyone I spoke to a real passion for the school, from Nadeem, who's our CEO, all the way through to Elena, who's my CEO. I was told about the story of the school, which I loved. I don't know if you know the story.
Which started out over there,
yes,
just across the road here.
That's right,
Paniagua,
in the 70s. And then, of course, it moved to its present site in 2000. Only school in Sotogrande, truly international. Day and boarding with lots of ambitions, and I just thought I can't not go to the school.
How does the Inspired connection work? Because Inspired owns a number of schools, I believe, around the world, and this was, how long ago was it acquired?
2018.
So
it's one of the earlier ones, actually.
Yeah. Okay. And Inspired have schools everywhere? I mean, how many, do you know how many?
120.
As many as that? Wow.
Yeah, so it's probably coming up to be one of the biggest groups in the world now because Nord Anglia's got 80. I think Cognita's somewhere around the 70, 80 mark. So very significant. The key, I think education in general is moving to group in a lot of places. So this might seem new to some people, but it's been going on for quite a long time, particularly in international environments. For us and for SIS, I think it brings some very important things. It allows the school and me to connect with a whole global network. We have a very, very professional headquarters in Spain, which provides everything from safeguarding to pastoral care to legal advice to HR, which sometimes parents forget all these things exist in our organisation.
Of course.
And we're connected up as a global group, so we have a global educational lead. The group is very ambitious for us to get the very best out of our schools, but also when we are part of a group organisation. So I meet with heads online, we can share good practice, we can collaborate. I don't think it'll be long before they have their first global conference. So it's a real opportunity. And I think the other thing it brings, because I did lead a school that was completely independent in the UK, when it comes to trying to invest in developing your property, to developing your area, you need an awful lot of support and finances to do that, which Inspired are able to do and are doing. Because at the moment, if you come up, we do look a little bit like a building site.
Sorry for the short interruption. I just thought I'd share a little tip with you. If you are looking to come to Sotogrande and put your kids into the Sotogrande school, you can find out more about it on the SIS.AC website, which is a school website, or indeed some blogs that we've written on our website, nol-sotogrande.com, NOLL-sotogrande.com. There you are, some information about the school that you'll be able to read at home. Interesting. I have come across international schools because I've been an international executive. My daughters have been in Colombia, in Cali, at the international school there. She finished, Alex, in the ISP, International of Paris. They both were in Kenya, International School of Nairobi, and then Kenya, which is a wonderful school, because I was very concerned about going there, but I was asked sort of where would it be in the US, because it's Canadian and US backed.
Yeah.
It says, well, the United Nations are here for a reason, and they wouldn't have the people coming here because they're in Geneva, Nairobi, and in New York. And they said, look, this would be a fantastic school in upstate New York, so don't worry about it. And the best education that I thought I could offer them, it was multicultural, 60 different nationalities. I believe you have this here as well.
65.
65 now, different nationalities.
Yeah.
The method of, and we get into that in a little bit, the method of teaching has changed so much since I was being beaten on my fingers from by a nun to what they do today.
Yeah.
But they said, Dad, I have to make a speech. Great, where? We're going to the United Nations, and I'm going to have to present at the United Nations. I said, really? Wonderful things like that. Anyway, let's just pull back a bit. Sotogrande, so you're here. Aspired is an international organization now. Has that, and in business, I've sort of worked with little companies and then big multinationals.
Yeah.
And when I remember being, managing in Kenya, East Africa, I had to report on a monthly basis in the same way that the US or the UK had to, and therefore my numbers were, and it was like a bit being beaten on the head, rather than let me get on with selling, like you would say, let me get on with teaching these kids, rather than having to. Yeah. Is there a layer there?
There is.
Being teaching and actually.
There is. There's and that layer is actually developing. So very much, our new educational CEO is an international head, Mike Lambert. He is very visionary and very clear about what we're trying to do and how schools work, and that education is front and central of everything that we do. I think what it does allow us to do is to be ambitious with other things. So as I was saying, we've got this 14 million euro project underway at the moment, which will give us a new cantina, science laboratories, and a performing arts facility. And that's going to come on stream within the next 12 months. So
that's what's being built between the new school and the old school, right there.
Yes.
And you've also acquired the land across the street.
Yes.
That's a car park, or is that going to be?
Yes, we're just developing a car park, which has been much needed as well, and is hopefully going to be much appreciated by, I suspect, most of the locals once we've got it all.
I don't want to see that photograph I saw in the newspaper outside the school.
No.
I drove past that. I couldn't believe how on earth could that happen.
Yeah, no. To this day, don't know.
It's amazing. Yeah. So it's great that there is a layer there, between that and the other, because one of the concerns I had, and this was a few years ago now, someone said they pull the kids out of the school. And I said, well, why? He says, because I don't want my 5-year-old doing homework. And I think they are owned by Inspired, and they've got to give results. And not giving results, then it's like the shareholder got involved, and there's someone who has to make money out of it. And that there's a balance there. I think you're going to be very, very careful.
Agreed.
That I said, my kid at 5, no, I want him to go to, come back and play. And, there are other ways of getting it. But anyway, that's by the by.
I've always thought you can never please all of the parents all of the time.
Never, ever.
And remember, everybody went to school. Yeah. So everybody has an opinion and a thought.
I know. And my concern is I haven't got a grandson, I've got a granddaughter, and my daughter's saying, Dad, I'm going to come here, I'm going to put them in school because I think it's wonderful, but you don't do rugby. Or do you do rugby?
We don't do rugby, no.
I understand why. But there were 4,000
kids
there.
We do tag rugby.
Yeah.
It's just
but the kids can do rugby here. I mean, I was with Dylan on Saturday at the polo fields. And I was so wonderfully surprised.
And Gibraltar as well is only a stone's throw, where there's and up the coast in Marbella.
Yeah. Okay, it's moving on. Values and school and all of that. Every school has its mission and its values. How have you? Are you happy with them? Have you sort of tried to tweak them?
The school's values are very clear because they're aligned to the IB values. Yeah. And it's very much in our case about inclusion. It's about the recognition of every individual and getting the best out of every individual. Yeah. It's also about us embracing the opportunity for education to be enriching, to be creative. And also we very much align with Inspired's values, which connect up with 4 pillars, which involve public speaking, creativity, academic success, and excellence.
Right.
So there's a very rich pool with regard to the values in the school. But in simple terms, what we want is the very best out of every child that comes into our school, to find something which enables them to go on their journey. Because that's what teachers do. Teachers see something in a person and nurture it and bring it out. We also want our students to be really good people, who make really great decisions, courageous decisions, which might not always be easy to make. And that's something we also focus very much on in what we do.
We've been very fortunate. We had 2, and we're getting another child coming for a week or 2, just for some sort of induction. We had, you may not have met her, Teresa Pino. Teresa, she left, and she's now studying medicine in Athens, and she's the daughter of one of the ironmongers here, guys, and fantastic story. And she did a thing for me in I think I was on holiday, or was I sick with COVID or something? I don't know. But she did a video with Jack, the headmaster, showing the school off it was amazing. And we put it on social media, and it got more hits than anything I've ever done. You know, it's wonderful. And we had Ethan come last year, and he wants to do some work this year, just doing some donkey work for me, running around doing whatever. And we've got I don't know, Michelle Fuchs, a girl coming as well this summer. So fantastic, you know, that they come here, and we love to be part of the community. And that is helping out, you know. And you know, because we're small enough, you know, they're not in a corner, you know, waiting for the day to finish. They actually come with me, and they do some filming.
Yeah,
with them,
great.
And you know, so they understand what it's all about and how we get on with it, which is great. How many kids are at school now?
1,322.
22. Okay, good number to know, because people ask me that all the time when people are looking for homes. What's the number? When I arrived, I think it was 850 in 2005, and it's grown and grown and grown. And you now have the boarding school right there. Used to be at San Roque, and now here. How many boarders?
157.
Wow. Is that going up or down?
No, that's it now. We have. And we have 4 of those are exchange students. So this is another very unusual thing about Inspired, which is that your child can take a half a term experience in another school in the world, and it's actively encouraged. So we have 4 children each term that join us just for half a term or maybe a whole term from somewhere else in the world to experience SIS. And we have some of our students who go to other schools in the world. And again, it's about this globalization, this idea of looking outwards. And it's really clever and really popular. So that's also a part of our boarding community.
And how far have the kids gone? The ones
we've had from Brazil, is our furthest so far. Bahamas, Italy, Switzerland, and the UK.
Okay. Is there a waiting list?
Yes.
How long is that wait? It depends for the year, presumably.
Yeah, it depends on the year. I mean, we have reasonable amount of flexibility because we are a big school. So things change for families, and we're an international school. So although we have waiting lists, you know, we can flex reasonably well as things stand at the moment. But it has been a very, very busy time for us. I don't know. It seems the focus on Sotogrande. I know there's been recently a lot of really good articles written about living here, that it's a great place in Spain. And obviously we've had ourselves a number of really good recent reports, like Forbes ranking us in Spain. And so that seems to be driving this kind of interest in our school, and we're unique.
What's the ranking? I mean, I haven't read that.
It's basically, if you Google us, we come up as one of the top 3 schools in Spain as an international school. And we're fortunate enough that we were written about. Someone came to visit us as an open morning. We don't know who they are. Because that's how
like
they
a
work.
Michelin star.
It's happened the same in other headships I've been in. And actually it's the best sort of publicity, because it means
Sure.
somebody's genuinely looked
Yeah.
at your school and seen you as you are.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're very fortunate. We also have really, really wonderful parents.
What is the child's journey? At what age could they start? I mean,
6 months.
6 months. It's a long way, isn't it, boys? Start at 6 months. Imagine that you thought it starts at 12. No, 6 months. I'm just addressing the lads here who've been at school. So at 6 months,
Yeah.
okay, that's obviously...
Nursery.
Yeah, no, that's not nursery. That's something before nursery, whatever it is, yeah.
Early years.
Yeah, early years. And then... what's the journey? So, a 6 month year old, well, 6 month year old,
Yes.
can then
Carry on
Carry
through
on.
in the different phases in the school.
Okay, I have a 2-year-old granddaughter who, on Saturdays, goes to French classes. You know, is that what you're doing? You can start with little languages. You do, you know, what's the journey from a 6-month-old to starting primary school? As I would know.
mean, basically, in the very early years, obviously we follow a very bespoke program, which is very much geared around the children developing and, as you say, experimental learning.
Yeah.
We take the children outside at a very young age. We have a woodland next to us.
Yeah.
They learn about the world around them.
Yeah.
There is exposure to languages, there's exposure to the arts, but all obviously very carefully managed in relation to their age. We have a really, really excellent team in the primary and in early years who devote themselves to that age group and are passionate about being with the very youngest. After that, you would bolt on in at age 4 or 5, you would begin to look at what we call the PYP. So we are an IB through school, which means we have PYP, which is the primary program of the IB. Then we have the middle years program of the IB, and then the final 2 years, which is the diploma program of the IB. So you could go all the way through.
Yeah.
I think the other thing to remember about the IB is it's a global qualification. So if for any reason a family needs to relocate, they take with them a passport to another IB school. So this has always been a great success of the IB, this ability to allow parents to move.
Yeah. It started in Wales, didn't it? The IB?
I mean, there's a bit of a contest between Wales and Geneva. I mean, I've been to the first international school in Geneva, and where certainly the first diplomas were handed out by Prince Philip. I'm not going to get into the controversy of which takes pole position.
No, because because of my travels, you know, my kids were going. I said IB. I mean, there's no point going to, you know, we were in America or parts of Latin America, parts of Africa, you know, and so IB was fantastic because you could go to any British university, you could go to most American universities.
Yep.
I think even the French at the end were saying yes, which they have their own way of thinking, of course, and you know, it was great, and it works. And what I loved about it, and you know, for those who may not understand, is that it's not, you don't end up studying 3 A levels at the end of your sixth form. You're doing a number of them.
I would describe it as a program. Okay. And I think if you go back to its original philosophy, which was, as you say, to set up a global education, there were some really key things at the heart of it which haven't actually changed. One was intellectual curiosity, and that's defined by what we call TOK and theory of knowledge, the way you think, the way you learn. What is art? It's a typical TOK question. Is that art? Is that art? And the idea behind it is to make students think. There's the fact that there's independent study through the extended essay. Yep. There's also CAS, which is creativity, action and service, which is about giving back and being a global citizen. And then there's the 6 diploma, 3 higher, 3 standard, and the idea of keeping up cores in languages, maths and English.
Yep.
If you look at that as a passport for education, it's pretty much perfect.
Yeah.
But at the heart of it are these values and the idea of a person. And I think that's what completely distinguishes the IB programs from single independent exams, which are exams, and that's fine. Yeah. But there isn't actually a philosophy behind them. There isn't a program behind them. Yeah. And that's why I think it's continued to be so successful after such a long time.
Yeah. No, I was very impressed as my kids grew through the thing. They come home with a question. I said, well, where's the book? You know, have you not got a book?
Yeah.
Said, no, we've got to go. So research, you know, it's real life. In real life, you have to, you know, start thinking and asking questions and investigating and, you know, interrogating things and coming back with an answer. And then you may go through, you know, this is what Mr. Churchill did, you know, but come back with some ideas of what Mr. Churchill did, and you know, let's talk about it.
It almost comes full circle to your rote learning methodology of timetables, because you were learning through fear, you weren't learning through curiosity.
Exactly.
So my daughter also studied the IB, and she is a scientist. But actually, because she studied the IB, she studied higher level biology, chemistry, and Spanish. And she's been able to basically carry on with her two passions, one being Spanish and languages, and the other being science through dentistry. Yeah. And it's that globalization, that flexibility, which I think is really special. And as you say, your children grew up learning to ask questions and, frankly, to think.
Yeah. No, absolutely, because that is so important. And at an early age, I was senior enough to interview people coming into the companies I was working for. And you can identify very quickly someone who traveled, someone who was singular, someone who had, you know, a broad view of things, and accepted differences and accepted that, you know, we're not all the same, and that, you know, they are like that, and it's not necessarily bad or good, or it's just that's the way they are. You mentioned art, music, and sports. Those are things that usually don't qualify you to go into university. You know, sports certainly not. You know, music, yes, of course, if you're going down that track, and arts as well. Is that a big thing? I know you talked about creating a new theatre.
Yes, I mean, they all are in separate ways. If I can come back to sport for a minute, we're a very unique school because we have an elite sports program. This is a bespoke program which we take students in M4, and they go through to work on a separate program which is geared around their excellence in sport. Our major sports for this are golf and tennis, and we have one or two students who are also involved in polo. And the idea is that they have a bespoke program which allows them to continue with their golf, for example. So this year we have 10 students who've got top-end scholarships to the US based on their golf, and also with us providing the background portfolio and the careers advice to allow them to get into the right colleges. So this is something else which is very special about our school. And as I say, the performing arts is wholesale. It goes all the way through, from the very littlest of our students sitting outside and singing, all the way through to primary productions, secondary productions. Last year we had a production of The Addams Family in San Roque. So it's everywhere.
Wonderful. The sports thing is amazing, because I interviewed Koska Orno, who is the general manager of the Real Club, and he as a child wanted to become a pro and ended up going to America on a program, and both his kids are doing this, and they realize that not everybody's going to be Tiger Woods, you know, but the fact is that that's their passion, and it's not just playing the pro. It's then there's a huge amount of opportunity within that industry.
Absolutely correct. Same for tennis.
Yeah, so you don't have to just be the player. The player needs all the support and this, so your passion can continue. Yeah,
exactly.
And you don't have to be the best actual player.
Or
everyone
completely
that
right.
maybe attracted you to it originally. Yeah, but it's a wonderful thing. And the other thing that I always believed in terms of sport, and rugby in particular, because that was my thing, was character building. You know, you don't punch people in the face, because you can get punched in the face when you play rugby if you're not careful. But it's a contact sport. It's what I call.
You don't have to tell me. My husband went to rugby school.
Yeah, and he's suffering now, like I do. You know, all the bits.
2 shoulders as a prop forward.
All the bits are falling off. Yeah, it's terrible, isn't it? Okay, so lovely. We talked about that. So we're creating whole people here. You know, people that can. What about alumni? Have you had any maybe it's too young, too early in your career with them to know who has gone on to be big things in the world, or do we have any?
I'm not really as yet. I mean, I don't know the alum in quite the same way as I would normally. I do know we have a number of former students who've gone on to excel, but I'm always a bit mindful of picking on particular individuals. I actually think there is something really special about the SIS students, and whenever I meet an alum, there's just a certain style, a certain way, a certain confidence which exudes from all of them. And I think it goes back to the conversation we had perhaps about being international and outward looking. Our students are self-starters, they're entrepreneurs, they care about what they do. Exactly.
He's only qualified at King's. He just came home from his exams, finished his final, and he's already got his business running.
Exactly. And I think that's also the hallmark of the future, is young people now, as a result of the world we live in, are self-starters and entrepreneurs. And I don't think that's going to change at all.
Yeah. Good. Sotogrande, you said, is a secret. I love to keep it as a secret because I live here as well, but the fact is it's not, and the secret is out. The secret is out, although I think we have certain things that will protect us. It's finite, it's low density. COVID made many people come and try and spend lockdown here and realize, both national and international people saying that May and June are the best months, or September and October are the best months. It's not only an August and July type of place. And therefore, that has made it, more popular, and COVID has done that. Also, sadly, we have Eastern Europeans who are, those who can afford it, coming out to the Costa. I'm not saying just Sotogrande, and we're getting a fair share of those. And you look at number plates out there. There's a lot of Poles, a lot of Czechs, a lot of Lithuanians, Estonians coming this way, and it's those people, obviously, that have an impact on the community, an impact at the school, because many of them, I think, end up sending the children there. Is that the COVID thing? That's common, presumably, because everyone suffered it in a similar sort of way. But the Eastern Europeans coming across, is that something that's impacted anyone in any way, or is it just kids are kids?
Okay, I think there will always be surges in cultures, and I think we teach our kids to accept all. I think it's really important. I'm quite concerned that the world is quite so divided at the moment. I feel very concerned that we're seeing global leaders talking with such extreme terms and such dangerous terms, and I think we have to readdress the balance. What I will always say is we are all citizens of the world, and we are all humans, and I don't know if we've lost that a little way in translation somewhere, because certainly to my parents' generation, who remember life after the Second World War, who remember when countries were divided, I've travelled through countries that are divided. I've also seen and experienced completely wrong attitudes to, for example, China. When I was there, a lot of what was being said was completely inaccurate to what was actually going on inside China. At the end of the day, my view is what we said earlier, that students are people, we're all people, and we're all people of this world. And I won't engage on what nationality someone is or isn't. And we teach our students to be absolutely tolerant and respectful of one another. And if they're not, then they get the joy of seeing me.
Whoa! And they don't go back twice.
No.
Okay, good. We've seen a lot of Marbella people coming this way as well. And that is it because the school is seen as better than the Alohas and the other schools over there? Or is it because Sotogrande is more of a tranquil place and a place, more nicer place to live rather than in Marbella? Is it because, and I'll say this because people have said it to me, is that the kids out there meet guys selling drugs outside in the car park, and that this is less of an issue here, or not an issue here at all, probably. Is that something of the reasons, or what's the reason that Sotogrande SIS has seems to me, become more popular than maybe schools up the road?
I think I think it is true that being in this unique place and being the only school and being located where we are, you don't very often find a prospective parent who doesn't come in and go, wow. I think the fact that our students are on one campus is a huge advantage. And as we've said, Sotogrande is very, very unique. I'm not here to say that there aren't unique things about Marbella, but I think in singular terms, Sotogrande is unique. That's it. And that's what always comes across when I speak to prospective parents. They just say, there's just nowhere quite like this. It's just very, very special. And yeah, that's what I believe.
We touched a little bit on the car park and the traffic issue, because that seems to be one of the things that a lot of people...
My entire working career, I seem to have spent more time about car parks. I once said to my husband, I can't believe I went to university and studied to end up with my fluorescent vest on more times than not directing traffic. But yes.
But it's also a thing. I mean, the road going up to the school is the bane of my life, because I'm trying to sell property on one side, and that noise that it's such a noisy road because of the early drop off and then the afternoon go home. But also the road's not looked after. I mean, it's not looked after in the way that I think hopefully it will soon, because there's been some changes. And I actually drove past that very funny situation of seeing one car on top of the other, which was apparently something happened in slow motion. It wasn't a violent accident. It was a freak accident, and ended up being something quite hilarious, but scary in the sense that it was but a lot of people talk to me about the traffic and being able to park and the thing, and thankfully it's being addressed.
Yes.
So that's the good thing. Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
Yes. That one can go out.
We'll take that away. Okay. Let me see. So the Sotogrande community, the impact on the community. The school is a major part. I always talk about pillars that we have here in Sotogrande. Obviously, polo is one of those because of the international tournament and the number of polo people that have their horses and ponies here and all of that. Golf is the other one, with Valderrama and Liv, and with the Real Club Sotogrande, and the time it's been here since right at the beginning. It's one of the founding things that was done by McMicken when he came, and the tournaments they've had, and the Rorys and the Shane, all these people that have been there as kids and done well. The sailing maybe is sort of not caught up with that, because there was an attempt to try and get it going. And the school is the sort of the fourth pillar of it. How would you define the school's impact overall? I mean, did you get that feeling that you are super important to the community itself?
Very much so. It would, for me, be one of the strong hallmarks of the school. So the school was obviously founded originally, as you said, just over the way, but founded to be a part of the Sotogrande community. And this remains part of its DNA. And connected to that, you have at least probably 60% of the original teachers that came here, certainly in the 90s, are all still here teaching. They've had their families here, they've invested in living here, so they have an investment in the community. Right. Alongside that, we pride ourselves on working really, really hard with Sam Roque, with connecting up with local parts of the community, and also we have a fantastic PTA. I would say the PTA at Sotogrande is another one of those things that tells you how special the school is, because our PTA support works with us to invite people into events. We had a massive event on Saturday. We had an international food event, and we had hundreds of people in school celebrating our different nationalities with lots of different foods.
I've been to that a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it was great fun, and our
someone,
students were singing and performing
Yeah.
as the entertainment, and there was a real energy, but it was very, very local in feel.
Yeah.
It felt both international and local, and that might sound odd, but you've been there.
Yeah.
It's a unique
Yeah.
way that those two align.
Yeah. No, and I mean, it's great to see the Ukrainian and the Russian guys there, and we just Ukrainian and Russian, and we don't care, you know. And then there's a Mexican, and then there was the other one, and they all interact, and everyone gets on with it, and you know, the kids don't worry about that sort of thing. It's as you say, they are really focused on just getting on with their own thing. And I was very impressed with the music. I mean, the standard of music that's coming out in some of those kids was astonishing.
Well, on Friday, it's our graduation and the D2 graduation, and we will have some incredible performances. Yeah. It will be a showstopper.
Everything I ask my guests here is, how would you define Sotogrande in one sentence? I mean, and people talk about it as, you know, quality of living or you know, different ways, but you, from a personal point of view, not necessarily from being the head, you know, the head of the school, how would you define Sotogrande?
I would define Sotogrande as a beautiful, natural, Spanish island. And I say island because it is its own place in its own unique setting, which has everything, as you said, around it. And I've never been anywhere quite like it. And I feel incredibly privileged to live and work here.
Mm-hmm. And do you have a message for people out there, families, the community, residents, business leaders?
Of course.
Business leaders take more of the kids.
Yeah, come and work with us. Come and see us.
Is there something that you would like to do in terms of the guy? I mean, I'm trying to think how I got. I think the first time Teresa came is because her dad I know, and he said, hey, would you do that? I said, of course I did. Yeah. Second time round, someone said, oh, they took him, so I got a knock on the door, and I took somebody else. And then the third time round, the girl just emailed us. Now we're probably on a list somewhere, and they say these people would probably say yes. And it's a girl who speaks German, and Stephanie's German, so the interview was in German, and you know, it was all great, and blah blah blah. So I think that's important, that the community also goes and says, you know, how can we help?
Yeah,
because
fabulous.
It's not the other way around. You know, it's how can we help?
Yeah. We welcome all of those things. We have a really successful careers department, and our head of careers is always delighted to hear from people who might be able to offer some experiences for our students or might want to work with us and our students. We're all about now and the future for Sotogrande. So yes, please do come and say hello.
I did have a stand there once in the gym.
It's a bit hot this time of the year.
Well, we were there with a stand, and the kids were coming out. And said, you know, what do I mean, fortunately, I could talk more than just real estate in Sotogrande because you know I do have this experience of working with multinationals around the world, and that was like you know, wow, okay. Yeah. But you know, you can do whatever you want. You know, this is the thing, and you don't have to be, as the French say, les chiens font pas les chats. You know, so you don't have to be. You know, you can be whatever you want. Is there anything that I've not asked you that you wished I had? Is there a message out there that maybe you want to give, or because I'm sure we get more and more people listening to this, and you know, it's.
I think you have been incredibly good at covering a massive range of different aspects. I think I would just say one thing to all of the parents out there. Certainly, firstly, to all of my parents at SIS, thank you for the incredible support you give us as a school. Thank you for sending us your most precious thing, which is your children, and we never forget that. And thirdly, if I was to say one question you hadn't asked me, it would be, I've been in education for 35 years. Do I think parents have changed? Oh. And I would have answered that by saying yes, but in only one way. And that is that parents still worry about the same things: homework, no homework, PE, sport, everything else connected with their children. It's pretty much predictable, apart from one, which is parents judge themselves. Parents say, am I a good parent? And my advice to parents is don't. Everybody's a parent, and when you're a parent, there's no guidebook. And that's what we as schools and educators are here to embrace and support you with. Just enjoy being a parent.
No homework then.
No.
Rachel, thank you so much for
Pleasure.
being with us. It's been really fantastic. And, if you ever want to come back, you're
Yep.
very welcome. Knock on my door.
They may not want me back.
No, I'm sure they do. There may be some other people in the school that would like to
Yeah,
come on.
sure.
Just
Sure.
any speciality or that sort
Yeah,
of thing that
great.
we do. We can. We do real estate, but we do everything else. Okay?
Brilliant.
So thank you very much for being
Thank
with
you.
us. Thank you. So there you are, Rachel Dent. What a wonderful guest we've just had. Please, 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 before you go, do subscribe to my channel, because it'll really help grow this podcast and bring more and more interesting people. So thank you very much, and see you next time.